Hi everyone, Leo is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode. Continuing the series on AKS Edge Essentials, I have Francisco with me to talk to me about AKS Edge Essentials multinode. Play the music. Hi everyone, Leo is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode, and today I have Francisco with me to continue the conversation on AKS Edge Essentials. Francisco, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Lior. Always great being here.
You know, Francisco, you've been busy. You've been around the globe with a lot of conferences lately, and we've been waiting to continue the conversation on AKS as essentials. And there is a lot going on in this space, Francisco. And right now, you guys are working on the multi-node architecture, and that's what we're here to talk about today, right?
Yeah, sure. We released our GA product like a couple of months ago. When we did that, we said that multi-node was an experimental feature. But we've been working with a lot of customers, and now we're happy to announce that with GA, and customers can go ahead and use this feature now and for production scenarios.
So, Francisco, before we are diving into the just kind of the demo and the use cases and where people should use this type of architecture, what's the motivation to use multi-node really with AKS Edge Essentials?
Yeah, sure. So, we see a lot of use cases where people do have this kind of distributed compute, and sometimes they're not using all this compute, and they have some memory, right, or they have some storage available. And the idea is that they can go ahead and create clusters with all these different devices they have there, and then they can just go ahead and start thinking of moving the workloads around this distributed compute that they have. As a backup, right, in order to get, right, like if one device goes down, you can go ahead and move workloads to another device and keep your processing and everything running without having to this manual intervention. Like Kubernetes and AKS will handle all this for you.
This we talked about networking, we talked about storage, and we talked about other things in the previous episodes. And it got me thinking when you and I had this conversation on AKS Edge Essentials, it got me thinking about all the potential use cases where people are going to use that. And I also had a conversation with Brian Chambers from Chick-fil-A a couple of weeks ago, and that was a very interesting conversation because I thought to myself, well, in the case of, and they've been using K3S, and in the case of AKS Edge Essentials, which also support K3S, I've been thinking to myself, there's a lot of use cases and industries that this can be a perfect fit. And I think that today, you want to talk to me about some things that's got to do with, with manufacturing and this type of industry, correct?
Yeah, correct. First of all, I love your episode about Chick-fil-A. And I think that's a great use case of how you just have this computer, you can go ahead and move things around. And in our case, right, we're also seeing a lot of traction when it comes to retail, but also we're seeing a lot of traction when it comes to industrial scenarios. And the idea now is talking about like how we can modernize these industrial kind of floor plans using AKS Edge Essentials and moving, these containers and, moving these workloads that they already have, like protocols like OPC UA. They already have industrial cameras. They're already managing all these kind of industrial floor plans connecting to the cloud, and see how we can leverage all this kind of processing power they have there, so that they can start thinking about more to modernize this kind of solution using AKS EE.
Yeah, and we see a lot of you mentioned retail and you mentioned manufacturing and all that, and we see this coming quite often. And the interesting piece about this is that Kubernetes is kind of becoming almost it is the de facto standard for containers orchestration. But when you're thinking about it from an edge or on-premises infrastructure, and you start realizing that this model of developing applications in the cloud and then rolling those applications down to the edge, that's not the only thing that matters. It's I always like when I'm having this type of conversation, it always boils down to the data pipeline. Right, and this is another thing that I talked to Brian about, and I'm curious to hear about how you're thinking about this in the context of these type of scenarios of manufacturing and just industrial manufacturing.
Yeah. You mentioned the first thing is having a unified experience around the cloud and the edge is extremely important. But at the same time, as you're saying, right, being able, it's these industrial scenarios are generating so much data that you actually, there's so many restrictions when it comes to networking with demilitarized zones. and you cannot upload all this data. So being able to process the data right exactly in this kind of industrial format is really important. And today, one of the things that we're going to be showcasing is how you can do edge AI directly right on these kind of devices without the need of uploading all the frames and this camera kind of streams to the cloud and then just getting all the results. So there's a lot of latency there that we cannot handle, because sometimes it's just these kind of devices are managing the floor plan, and you cannot go all the way up to the cloud and just come down. So the idea is just that you're doing all the edge AI inferencing and reducing latency, reducing the kind of the data that you're upstreaming to the cloud.
Okay, so I'm excited about the demo. You mentioned the AI piece, which is obviously blowing up all over the place, and I'm curious to see how that fit into the universe of AKS Edge Essentials and also the bigger picture when it comes to this type of industry. So, what do you have for me today?
Sure. So the idea is we're going to be showcasing this industrial scenario where you have a round robot that is going to be doing weldings. And that is part of this production line. So you have a motor that is just like moving the production line. At the same time, you have this industrial camera that is actually looking at to this welding to detect if the welding is okay or not, if it's a porosity. And in case there is a porosity, okay, we'll need to stop the plant maybe and just do a manual inspection. So you can see here, right in this diagram, you have the industrial camera, you have the motor. And at the same time, all these are connected to an AKS multi-node cluster. So here we have 3 kind of Lenovo ThinkEdge devices. These are industrial gateways. And the idea will be, we're going to showcase how you're running all these workloads together on one of the devices. But if one device goes down, you can always go ahead and use the other devices as a backup, and you can continue to run your plan and your inferencing without kind of issues.
There is one thing that comes to mind when I'm looking at this slide. I'm looking at the robot, and I'm looking at the clusters and all that. And I got to tell you that this is somewhat, for me, is mixing old and new, and I'll explain. My father, he's been working in this industry of CNC and just kind of manufacturing for like 50 years now. And I never thought to myself that the things that I've been working on and talking, with folks like yourself on, are going to be somewhat related to the field that he's part of. And, when I'm seeing on the right, when I'm seeing the AKS Edge Essentials clusters, and I'm seeing on the left, I see the robot, I can't not thinking about how those universes of industrial, right, and manufacturing are starting to mix into this universe of cloud native and modernization and edge computing to the point that we are at right now. So it's just kind of a funny or an interesting anecdote that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, that's great. And we're seeing a lot of this right now, and I think it's going to be increasing in the next few months. Right. But yeah, let me just go over one more slide. So that was previous one is big picture here, more into the details. So we already talked about what were multi-node clusters, using the external virtual switch for the networking. So we're running 3 devices using one Windows IoT Enterprise LTSC, and we have 3 different minor kind of Linux nodes. They're both control plane and worker nodes. For this demo, we have, for the first workload that you can see there, is the RTSP simulator. So we do not have a real camera. We're just going to be simulating that. Then we have OPC UA Publisher. This is a well-known kind of protocol when it comes to industrial scenarios on how to transfer data. Then we have InfluxDB. This is not, right now, it's not highly available, but it's just like it's a database where we're going to be putting all this telemetry. And then finally, the edge AI inferencing that will just grab, the frames from the RTSP simulator and just doing the AI inferencing and returning back with the probability of that kind of porosity on the welding.
Very cool. Show me that in action. I gotta see this.
Okay, so let's go ahead and check it out. So if you see here, as always, I'm gonna show you the cluster. I already set up my cluster. If I do kubectl, I get nodes. Sorry, my bad. Here you have, 3 nodes: node 1, node 2, node 3, running, Linux nodes.
Yep.
So what I'm going to be doing now, I'm going to just run a script. We're going to be providing this as a sample. It's part of our AKS Edge Labs GitHub, so anyone can just download and run it. So I'm just gonna write this script, configure them,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna say clean because I already deployed this in the past, and I'm just gonna run also. Let's see here. Sorry, and then it's run API. So this is what I'm gonna be doing is first is gonna be installing all the dependencies. So we're running Grafana on the Windows host OS. So we're gonna be showcasing also that interop between Linux and Windows.
Mhm.
Second, we're gonna just clean previous deployments, applying the new deployment configurations. We're gonna say here ensure all the Grafana components. So let's make sure they're there. We're gonna delete everything that we have here. So data. So we have an InfluxDB. Let's delete it. So we recreate everything. Make sure also the API keys are not there. And finally, I'm gonna also delete all the dashboards. So make sure that we have everything from scratch. Yes. So now ensure yes. We're gonna say, and this is gonna create all the new deployment.
Mhm.
It's gonna handle. It's gonna go ahead, check what are the services. So we have InfluxDB, OPC UA, and the Telegraph, which is our Edge AI service. And then go ahead, create the data sources on Grafana. It's gonna create the dashboards on Grafana. And finally, it's gonna open up this kind of Grafana dashboard so that we can go over it. So this is really simple. It's just running the script. But again, if you want to go and check into the details, we're providing the source code. So you go ahead into our GitHub and check it out.
Yeah, and obviously we're gonna put the link in the description down below. I'm so Christoph, Francisco, as you are doing this, I wanted to ask you, do we see users are deploying this type of stacks, like full-blown stacks, like you're showing right now as an example, right? You're showing Influx, you're showing Grafana, right? But obviously you can have, you have the OPC and obviously the simulator. But do we see people are actually deploying this type of stacks in those small footprint deployments?
Well, yes, we're seeing this kind of, let's say, workflows that generally are part of all these solutions. So telemetry, right? We're seeing a lot of Prometheus storage. Also there, generally also a bit of when it comes to cert managers and how you manage the secrets. And then we're seeing a lot of traction when it comes to Edge AI, and that's why we're trying to show you some kind of Edge AI in this demo.
Very cool.
So there we have it. Grafana, that's the data source created. Again, we're using Influx. The dashboard created, and now we're gonna go over the dashboard. So we go here, and we have two dashboards to show today. So first of all, Edge UI Linux. So as I was saying, we're simulating this welding demo. The feed, and you're seeing how the video here, and on the right side, we're seeing what's the welding state. If there's no weld, if there's normal weld, or finally there's a welding porosity, and actually we need to take a manual step there. Target hardware, CPU. Right now we do not support GPU for AKS, but we'll bring that support in the upcoming months. Probability, this is a probability of actually detecting a welding porosity, and finally the models, the frames per second that we're able to kind of handle right now with CPU.
Yeah, there's not a lot in that dashboard, but it's super efficient. Just going to show you the things that you need.
That's just one big picture. And then the second dashboard that I want to show you here, it's quite similar. So we're still showing the same information, but we're adding a bit more. So if you see here, this is an idea of actually what would happen in the plan. So you have this OPC client that will have three states: 0, 1, or 2. Again, 0, no weld; 1, normal weld; and 2, there's a welding porosity detected. And if you see here, there's an operator alert, right? When it's fine, there's no alert, but when we actually detect a porosity, maybe a manual shutdown is needed. And actually, right, you can see that here in this tower light and this emergency stop button that this kind of operator would need to take into account. The other thing here you can see is that we have this InfluxDB history of what is actually happening. So the idea now is this is all running on one node. The idea will be to just go ahead and stop that node and see how everything will go from one node to another node.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do here is kubectl, get pods, right? Dash wide, and I'm going to watch it. let me open this a bit more so that we see. So if you see here, we have the InfluxDB and the Telegraph. Those are running. And the RTSP simulator. I don't want to move those pods just because they say simulating something. But all the others are just running right now on the Node 3. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to make sure I refresh these dashboards. Let's say 2 seconds, 10 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and stop Node 3. So I have just a little API here that what we're going to be doing is simulating if this node, I don't know, was disconnected, for example, or it's not working.
Basically, just making the Kubernetes API unavailable.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is, there it is. So you can see what happened is I stopped the node, and you can see that actually all these pods are being terminated. And everything is running right back again. So if you can see here, everything is running. You didn't even notice that there was actually a node that was stopped. And if I go here, right, again, I'm just going to do it again so that you can see that actually right now are running, for example, node 1.
Yeah.
So, the idea is showcasing how Kubernetes and AKS EE is handling all these faults and these nodes going down, and will move around the workload so that your service keep running and there's nothing that you need to do. So again, you can see node 3 down, but you actually see that the solution is still running. The InfluxDB was still being populated, and there was no kind of a loss of data.
And Francisco, this is where so a couple of things comes to mind as I'm looking at this demo. The first thing that I would say is that I always like to see how these type of demos with Kubernetes are evolving, and I always also like to use the watch command, because that emphasizes kind of the failure that you are simulating, and you just almost you see that in real time. You see the life cycle of those pods that are running the application. And the second thing is, putting things in the right perspective here. What you're showing here, like in the real life outside of the demo, this is going to be a real-time application. I mean, that image that you're showing, that's a real-time application that needs to be operative at all times. And you just basically kill the underlying fabric underneath there, and it's still running. So that's very impressive.
Yeah, and it's impressive how fast it was. So if you can see it here, right, it was just like 1 second or less than 1 second, and everything was up and running again. Nothing, no manual intervention, from anyone. Just like Kubernetes handling all these by itself.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about mission critical applications in the context of Kubernetes, AKS Edge Essentials specifically, and obviously this type of scenarios in the entire stack that you just showed me. So that was awesome demo, short and sweet, Francisco, as always. Thank you so much for that. And Francisco, you and I, we have more episodes that are coming in the series of AKS Edge Essentials. So definitely make sure to subscribe, because why not? And for the Jumpstart viewers, we're gonna see you next time. And thank you so much, Francisco.
Thank you. Bye-bye.